Welcome to LA Fishguys. My name's Jim Stime, and this is the coolest aquarium reality show on the internet. We're here in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. This is the second time we've come here. The first time we came here to build this 280-gallon going-to-be coral reef tank. We just got here on Friday night, and my goal tonight is to get the water running in the system so that I can introduce the salt mix in there, and by tomorrow morning most of that should be blended far enough along that I can get an accurate reading on the salt level. And I've got 500 pounds of Indonesian live rock over there in the corner ready to go into this tank. So let's go take a look at those notes that MJ left us, because we have to do a few things before we can turn the system on. So let's get to work. Okay, here's MJ's notes. Basically, he's telling me that there are 6 more hose clamp connections. He's been waiting for me to bring those nifty snap clamps. There's 6 more hose connections that need clamps on, and then he's got, obviously, the water in the tank. Now, the water in the tank, that's pure water. We purchased this filter system here and had it shipped in about 2 weeks ago. MJ has gotten it installed. Now, this is a deionization and reverse osmosis purification system, and he's got it all set up. So not only has he made 270 gallons of water in the tank itself, but these 2 cans here both have reverse osmosis water inside them, and I'm going to use that water to fill the balance of the tank so I can get it running with water down in the filter system. Now, take a quick little review. The tank is 280 gallons, has a internal overflow at one end of the tank, and inside this overflow we've got not only the Durzo standpipe, which is the drain out of the overflow. This is what leads down to the Berlin style filter below. But additionally, we've got an intake strainer mounted on the low end on the front side of this internal overflow, and that is where the water gets sucked into and brought down into this 3,600 gallon an hour circulation pump, which in turn sends that water back up through the bottom of the overflow into that T, and that T goes to 2 individual sea swirl units, this being the second one over here. And there's too much condensation there. You can see it there. Once I get the water level filled up and running, we'll get a better chance of seeing that. But the overflow also serves as a point where the return from the filter below comes back into the tank. Now, that filter is a Berlin style or Euro style filter, or really more of a sump or a simple reservoir. Other than having those 2 micron socks which capture the water as it comes in from the internal overflow, there's no real filtration in this reservoir. Granted, there's the protein skimmer, and to a certain degree that's a type of filtration, but that's not what I meant. The point being that a sump simply serves as a place to not only place the protein skimmer, but to perform basic types of filtration, whether it be chemical filtration with the use of activated carbon or some GFO or some nitrate removing media. You could lie those bags down inside here or hook up small canister filters to it. But anyhow, the water will be trapped out by those 2 micron socks, trapping out the particles, and in turn at this end is picked up by this Awaki water pump that's going to discharge up to this T. A portion of that T will drive the protein skimmer, and the balance of that flow moves along the underside of the tank here. You can see at the far end of the tank, MJ has gotten it rigged up, a couple of valves in case we have to shut the flow off, and this goes up to our refrigeration unit. That's a 3rd horsepower chiller sitting up there. And the reason it's up here is twofold. One, heat rises, so in this case the heat will stay at the top there. And two, once we get the stand finished and the canopy goes back on top of the tank, this door here will slide shut. That way it separates the hot air aspect of the chiller from the aquarium itself, or the room, or in this case, the man cave.
Of course, I'm referring to this extra room in the garage where the homeowner keeps his various reptiles, freshwater fish, and birds.
So MJ's note says there's 6 clamps that I need to put on tonight. There's 2 on the protein skimmer. There's 1 right at the top of the main discharge going back underneath the tank. There's 1 where the hose connects to the barb going into the bottom of the tank through the internal overflow. And I think there's 2 up there by those ball valves going up to the chiller. So let's get those clamps on and make sure there's no leaks. These little plastic snap clamps are pretty nifty. They're first of all plastic, so they won't really corrode in salt water. They have kind of a ratchet or a tooth arrangement that as you push them together like a Chinese finger cuffs, you can't pull them apart. What you do is you turn them sideways and they come apart. Pretty slick. Again, little ratcheting kind of device, sturdy, strong, and then turn them sideways to uncouple them. Possibly at the local hardware store. I would tend to think more of a specialty item. I think they're called snap or snappy clamps.
And not only is it a slick design, they're easy to install. With the use of a wrench, I can squeeze these together and secure the connection in moments, as opposed to minutes with using a worm clamp and a screwdriver.
And here's 5 and 6, these ball valves that lead up to the refrigeration unit.
And just like those worm clamps, these too simply squeeze or crimp themselves around the tubing and squeezing themselves over the barbed connections, thus making a seal.
So I want to take a moment here and show you the live rock. Now if you're not familiar with the term curing, essentially what we've done is we've ordered in live rock that was harvested from the ocean. That rock contains a lot of the life that was on it. But the reality is you can't ship that rock in a bag of water. It's actually shipped in boxes, quite often draped with seaweed or possibly wet newspaper to try to keep it moist. So the reality is you're going to lose some life on the rock. Hence the curing process. What we have here is a 300-gallon tub, Rubbermaid tub or horse trough that we filled up with salt water, and we put the live rock in here. You can see I've got it aerating here, kind of a pseudo foam fractionator or wannabe protein skimming effect. The air bubbles will help drive some of the organics out of the water. And in addition, I previously shipped them one of those nifty sump pumps that I've used in the past for pumping water out of my 100-gallon container. Well, we have one of those sump pumps here, and it's doing a dual purpose. One, I'm going to use it in a moment to pump water out of these reservoirs so I can fill the tank. But at the moment, it's positioned in here just to create additional circulation or water movement. Remember, there's no real filtration here. We're just trying to allow whatever death, if that's what you want to call it, to fall off the rock or be rinsed away. And the more current I can create in there, the more chance I'm going to sweep some of that debris off. So that's our live rock. There are 500 pounds of live rock collected probably within the week before we actually received it, and it's been sitting in this tub for the last 2 weeks. And I understand that the foam has subsided significantly, so there obviously was some organics in the water, and just this simple aeration here has helped drive a lot of that out of the water, because even though there's still a little bit of bubbles at the surface, you can still see there's a lot of live rock in there, and the water's pretty clear. So I need to borrow that sump pump out of the tub that the live rock's curing in, and I'll use that to pump that purified water out of those reservoirs into the top of the tank so I can get this system running. But before I actually turn those pumps on, I need to go through and double check, make sure all those fittings are done, so I don't have any surprises when I turn the pumps on or open up the valves. So come on back for the next part as you see me start up the system and hopefully don't have to deal with any leaks.
Make it a point to check out part 2 of the Jackson Hole Wyoming LA Fishguys episode. As it turns out, that great little sump pump that I sent that I'm using over in the live rock doesn't have the garden hose fittings on it, so I can't pump the purified water into the tank. Have to do it by hand.